Last would have been my dad's 100th birthday. And it'll be the end of this month, 47 years since he died. On Monday, my brother and sister and I had a text conversation about that birthday and all that time and the dadisms that we recall. And they were flying back and forth, and the laughter emojis were showing up, and we were laughing. And though it's been a long time, I can still hear his voice saying those things. A lot of them are not churchy things that he would say, though he was a churchy person. So last Sunday was a somber day, a somber remembering day. Monday was a day that was alive with laughter. In that almost half century that he's been gone, that very sad event, the event itself hasn't changed, but the way it sits in us, we have changed. And we're in a much better place with it, which I'm grateful for. And it's encouraging to know that now in a time dominated by negative news, bad news, that good things can happen, that change, improvement can happen in us and around us. Sometimes it may take a long time. Sometimes it happens like that. And that's the kind of change that we're talking about in the story today that's at the heart of this story. John tells us that there's a wedding that Jesus' mother Mary is invited to, and Jesus and his cohort, they're invited as well. Maybe it's family, relatives, a family wedding probably, in Cana. And so they go. And weddings are a big deal now. They may even have been a bigger deal. The celebration wasn't just a day or two. It would go on for a week. The party, the celebrating. So, was required to keep things going and to keep everybody in the mood. Who would come to a wedding would bring things to contribute, but the bulk of the provisions would be provided by the host family, usually the groom's family. Well, these folks are not rich people, and so they run out much more quickly than they had hoped. And maybe the guests didn't bring very much because they're not rich people either. So the wine runs out. The social lubricant for the party runs out. So what happens? If I hadn't read the story, you could tell it to me, right? Jesus turns water into wine. The party goes on. The family saves face. There's not that social embarrassment that they would have suffered otherwise. And Jesus' followers believe in him. Yay, Jesus, you go, right? Chalk one up for Jesus. And it is one. John tells us this is the first sign that Jesus performs in John's gospel. There are 7 of them. Why 7? 7 is a complete number, like the days of the week. And so it may be that there's a new creation story, like the days of creation, that is unfolding in this gospel. We get a different microphone? All right. So, this is the first of 7 signs. Oh, there we go. First of 7 signs that Jesus performs in John's gospel, the 7 being like the creation story, the days of the week, 7 days. This unfolds. And the question then, what are signs for? We have signs, not necessarily the supernatural ones, but you saw signs coming to church. Sarah saw them twice because she had to go back home and come. So, what are the signs for that we see that are out there for us? To inform us, to catch our attention, to show us that something is coming up, to slow us down because this is a busy area, all those things. But the signs themselves are not the thing, right? Signs indicate something down the road. Something is we're on our way towards something. So we shouldn't get lost on the signs. We don't pull over and marvel at that wonderful stop sign, right? We stop, and then when it's clear, we go. That's what signs are for. Though we do sometimes, and in John's Gospel, Jesus chastises people for getting stuck on the signs. You just came because of the bread that I provided for all of you. That's why you're here. We sometimes do that. We lose the forest for the trees. That's a beautiful tree, and we lose everything else. So we have to be careful of that. At the same time, there are some trees that maybe need our attention, some details that are particularly important. And in this story, there are a number of things that maybe we should pay attention to. For instance, what does the wine for the wedding show up in the second round? Is it a shipment from the vineyard, that comes late? Is it a bunch of barrels of wine, casks? It's water jars. 6 stone water jars, we're told, that hold 20 to 30 gallons of water, and the water is for rituals of purification. But the jars themselves in the story are empty. Is this John's commentary on the emphasis on purity in the Jewish religion at the time? I think it may be. He's saying it's an empty practice. It does not do anything for us. And so what's the alternative to purity? In the story, it's party, right? Celebrate. Celebrate this. It's in the hymn. Celebrate this day, celebrate this new life, celebrate this coming together of these two people, this new beginning, and particularly in the Gospel of John, celebrate this new life that is shining through, showing up in this character, Jesus. Celebrate. It's time to have a party. A second detail that might sneak past us is who's in on this transformation? Who realizes, who knows what's happened? Is it the steward, the head caterer, the head server? No. Is it the bride and groom or their families? No. Who knows? Well, mom finds out. But it's in parentheses in the story, the servants are the ones who know what has happened. The essential workers back in the kitchen, the people gathering things up, bringing the food out, doing dishes, those people that are taken for granted, that we assume will be there and that we sometimes mistreat or don't even think about, they're the ones who know what has happened here in this rather amazing transformation. I think that's interesting. And the third thing that is noteworthy in the story, amongst others, is the exchange between Jesus and his mom. Mary finds out what has happened, this social disaster, this embarrassment for this family. And so she flags Jesus down, who's across the room having some intense discussion with somebody, and she goes, as she's done many times. And so he comes across the room, and she says, "Shh, don't tell anybody." But they ran out of wine. This is bad. And his response is, "Woman," which is not disrespectful. It's actually, he's addressing her with respect. It's like, "Madam, that's not my problem. It's none of my business, as it is none of yours. Besides, it's not the right time." What does Mary do? Does she nag him? Does she throw her hands up and walk away? she turns to the servants, the ones who let her know that this had happened, that they ran out, and she says in a voice loud enough for Jesus to hear, "Do whatever my son tells you to do. He's a good boy. I know he'll do the right thing." That's not in there, but can't you just hear it? Yeah. It's funny. It's comical. It's meant to be funny. It's meant to lighten the story and the mood. It's meant to help the celebration. This is a party. And we should laugh at that. It's humor. But what would have happened had Mary not spoken up, had she not noticed? Would Jesus have even realized this opportunity for transformation that was right there in front of him? Would he have seen it without her? Ed is attending a 30-day silent retreat at a Buddhist retreat center. This is in the northeast part of the United States, Vermont, somewhere up there. It's, I think, Shambhala Buddhism, which he says the focus is on essential human goodness, which he struggles with because he's known enough non-goodness out of human beings that this is a problem. And this is going to be 30 days of silence all day long, meditating on aspects of the goodness of humanity. And he knows it's going to be a struggle, and he's there because of that. And he creates a little trick, a little game for himself for when he needs it. And he knows he will during this 30 days. When he checked in at the retreat center, he looked at the attendance list, the registrants, to see if maybe there's somebody there that he knows, a name he recognizes, or somebody maybe he wants to meet. And he sees one name on the list of this, I think it's like 60 people who have come to this retreat from all over the place. And it's a French name. And he says it's unpronounceable for him. Figures it's a French Canadian, a Quebecois, who has come. And since it's a silent retreat, they don't have time to talk. You don't interact socially. You just sit in silence all day, and you go back to your room at night, and you're in silence. And so while he's sitting in meditation on this cushion on the floor with this 50-some other people in the room, every so often his mind will veer off the point of meditation for the day on some aspect of human goodness, and he'll go to the ungood side of people and the experiences he's had. So he plays a little game, and he opens his eyes, and he inconspicuously looks around the room, and the game is, let's find Frenchie. And he tries to figure out which of these 50-some people, which is the French person who has this weird name. And he can do that for quite a while until he sort of gets himself off that negative beam and back on, and then returns to this meditative state. So 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks into this retreat, silence day after day, he's sitting there on his cushion, meditating, and he gets a tap on his shoulder. And he's handed a note, and the note has a phone number. It says, "Call Jim." Call Jim. He doesn't know a Jim. He doesn't know anybody with that name. And he wonders if this person is confused. But it's for him. And so he goes to his room, and he gets his phone, and he goes outside to make this phone call. He dials the number. Jim. Could it be Jimmy, his brother, who he doesn't speak to? He has 3 brothers. They don't talk. They haven't for years. History. Well, sure enough, it's Jimmy. And the first 3 words that Ed speaks in weeks are, "Did Mom die?" Be the only reason he'd get a call from a brother. Yes. So then very quickly he gets the information where the service is going to be, when it'll be. And then he calls and books a flight, and he's to fly from wherever out east to California, the other side of the country, for this service. At the service, which is led by his fire-breathing fundamentalist revival, hell and damnation brother preacher, the first thing his brother says is, Mom was a Christian and she was a Republican in that order. And the rest of what he said followed from there. Ed really struggled to just stay in the room. After the service, his three brothers cornered him. And they made it clear to him that they knew where their mother was now, and that he would never, ever see her again for eternity unless he straightened himself out, literally, and stopped, as they say, stop being a fag. He's a gay man. Ed has all this history with these brothers, these older brothers, who have ganged up on him like this before, for years. That's why they don't talk. And this is a verbal assault, an ambush on him at their mother's funeral. And he can't believe it, and yet he can. Inside, he just curls up into the fetal position, and he goes back into that little boy that remembers being bullied and beaten up and harassed by his brothers growing up. And it just breaks him. He's just devastated, as if losing their mom wasn't enough. Now they would do this. Talk about inhuman, ungood. He leaves as soon as he can, just hurting and angry and broken, gets on a plane, flies back for the rest of the retreat, which he needs now. And he sits in silence for a couple of days, and then the second to the last day of the retreat, they're given some time to talk. If they want to connect with each other, if there's something out about each other, and they're sitting in small groups on their cushions on the floor. There's like 5 or 6 in this group. And as they're sitting there, this woman says to him, "What happened? You were here, and then you were gone, and then you were here again. Where did you go? What went on?" And he explained to her and to them that his mother had died, and he had flown to California for the service, and he was back. And the guy sitting next to him on the cushion reaches out and puts his hand on Ed's arm. And when Ed turns to look at him, he looks him in the eye, and this guy says, "Congratulations." And Ed is stunned. He's trying to process this. What do you say to that? I don't understand. And as his face shows his sort of horror, stunned horror, the guy who spoke to him realizes he's said the wrong thing. And then Ed realizes he's just found Frenchie. Because the guy didn't mean to say congratulations. What he meant to say was condolences. But his English is really not very good. And Ed's French is non-existent. And he doesn't know what to say to this guy to try to repair it. And the guy is horrified now at what he said. He realizes he said something wrong. And Ed looks around at the other people in the circle, and their faces are frozen in shock as well. They don't know what to say. And Ed, grasping for words, suddenly starts to laugh. And the laughter just rises up and rolls out of him, and he just starts to howl with laughter, just almost breathless. He can't stop it. There's no way to control it, and the tears run down his face. And he looks around, and the other people are shocked, and then they start to giggle, and then pretty soon these gales of laughter just come rolling out of them as well, and they're just roaring with laughter at this ridiculous setting. And Ed looks at Frenchie and realizes Frenchie is sitting there horrified, thinking they're all laughing at him. Ed doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to say. Without thinking, he reaches over and pushes him, knocks him off his cushion. He flops over onto the floor, and looks up at him in shock, and then he starts to laugh too until they're all just sort of dissolved in this laughter at this ridiculous, sad, wonderful moment. And Ed said, in that moment, it dawned on me, this is the essential human goodness that we all seek. It's right here, right in this moment, in these people. And this is how it's expressed this time. When I heard the story, I thought, that's the sacrament of laughter, of humor, where words are useless and you try to explain things and you can't. But if you enter in, surrender to the energy, to the spirit of the moment in this place, it transforms you and begins to work on others around you. It changes things. Mary comes to Jesus and says, Jesus, they ran out of wine. And he says, that's not my problem. It's not my business or yours. Besides, my hour has not yet come. But a crucial moment has come. And Mary says to the servants, do whatever he says, trusting that he will catch on, that he will realize the opportunity for transformation in this moment, that he will have his epiphany too. It can come at any moment for any of us, even this one. Amen.